Hi everyone, welcome back. This is probably the video that is going to get the most requests and already has gotten some requests, so I thought that I would make it now. And that is, what is it actually like doing a postdoc at Harvard and Harvard Medical School? Just a disclaimer before we get started that everyone's mileage is going to vary and that Harvard is a big place. So whether you're doing your postdoc at the main undergrad campus, the medical school, an affiliate hospital, your experience is going to differ, and it's also going to differ depending on your PI. So with that, I just want to say that these are just my personal experiences and don't necessarily reflect everyone's experience at Harvard. So with that, we'll jump right in. And what I'm just going to start off with is by saying that there's a lot of pressure working at Harvard. And the majority of that pressure comes from yourself. Of course, your PI might put some pressure on and others might, but most of the pressure that you get is within yourself. So for example, I would say that the standard hours where I was that people were working in the lab was something around people starting at 8:30 in the morning and working till about 6 to 6:30 at night, Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends would come in and do whatever treatments they needed for cells or for mice. And that was pretty typical. But there's always somebody that's going to work more than that. There's always somebody there early in the morning. There's always someone there late at night. There's always somebody there all weekend long. And you're going to put pressure on yourself as to, am I doing enough? When you start in your lab, you're going to meet people that have published in Nature. There's going to be more senior postdocs there that are either senior postdocs or at the junior faculty level, which at Harvard Medical School is instructor of medicine. And you're going to inevitably meet people that have gotten several grants and gotten publications in really high publications such as Nature Cell Science. And it's going to be intimidating. You're going to look at them and you're going to look at yourself and you're going to say, wow, can I ever really get to that level? You're going to hear stories about PIs that are going to tell you that you need to be funded within X amount of time or we're going to kick you out of the lab. And I haven't actually seen that happen, but you're going to hear stories about that, or stories about postdocs competing with each other for projects, which again was something I think happened a long time ago and doesn't happen now. But you're going to hear these stories and you're going to get this kind of knot in your stomach of, do I really belong here? So when I started, I was coming out of a small grad school and did well for myself. I published several manuscripts, several reviews. I had a lot of co-authorships. I had applied for a pre-doctoral fellowship on the way out the door, so I had gotten some grant writing experience under my belt, and had picked up a training grant this summer leading into my postdoc, so I already had my own funding going in. So I felt pretty good about myself. But when you get there, it's a different league. Things move very quickly. And I quickly felt overwhelmed and quickly felt like I didn't belong. And I would say that lasted for the first 5 months or so, where I felt really underprepared. I felt like I'm totally out of my league, that I thought I was smart enough when I started, but maybe actually I wasn't intelligent enough. Maybe I didn't work as hard as other people. And it really got to me. And I was at the point where I was working, my long hours during the week, and I was there all day on Saturday. I was there all day on Sunday, and I was working at one point for a few months every single day. I was in the lab, trying to perfect technique, trying to learn new things, trying to get better. And I remember that I sat down with an older postdoc who I looked up to in the lab, and I was telling him about the kind of troubles I was having and feeling like maybe I just don't fit in here. And I remember what he told me really clearly, and this was some of the best thing I'd ever heard from him, is he goes, when I started here, I felt the same way. And I worked for the first year, and literally none of the data that I got from my first year are going to be in the manuscript I'm publishing now in Cell Metabolism. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And guess what? It's the same for everyone in the lab. And I, after that, went and talked with more of the senior postdocs that were in my lab and realized they all felt the same way. Every single one of them had the most severe case of imposter syndrome I'd ever seen. Every single one from my lab and from others all felt the same way. Yeah, when I started, I felt like I was totally out of my league. I felt like I was stupid, that I didn't belong, that I didn't work as hard as other people. And the first year was miserable. And this was something that I think almost 100% of the people expressed to me as I talked. And so my first piece of advice is that if you are considering doing a postdoc at Harvard, don't let the internal pressure get to you, because I promise you the internal pressure you're going to get is going to be so much more than anything you're going to get from your PI or from other postdocs. Most of them are really friendly, know what you're going through, but the internal pressure you put on yourself is going to be so tremendous. My second piece of advice that I want to give to everybody is that you don't need to publish an NCS paper to be successful. So for those of you that don't know, NCS is Nature Cell Science. You don't need to publish one of those to be successful. So I know postdocs that were at my institute that had gotten every grant that you could think of, published Nature papers, and seemed like the perfect candidates for jobs. And for months and months and over a year have been trying to land faculty positions and just could not. And then I know other people that went through the same exact institute, got some grants, published decent papers with, an impact factor of 8, 9, 10, maybe 11, and that was it. Never published that really high impact paper and landed faculty positions at major research institutes like Ohio State University. Yes, publishing good papers is important, and I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on that, but when you really spend time talking to faculty members that are recruiting other postdocs, they're going to tell you that that's not the only thing they're looking for. And in fact, I've seen some really stellar candidates get beaten out just because they weren't the right fit for the department, that the department was looking for somebody with a particular skill set, and the person that had that skill set didn't have a Nature paper. And sometimes that's the way it happens. So don't feel that you need to publish in one of these journals to have a successful postdoc. Also, if you're not thinking about going into academics and you're like me and you end up moving into industry, you don't need that type of publication anyways. Just publishing anything is good. So what you really need to do when you go into your postdoc, similar to grad school, but maybe a little bit more now that you have more freedom, is you need your kind of stretch project, something that is a little bit high risk, high reward. And then you also need something more attainable that if you chop away at it for the next couple of years that you're going to get a publication. That's my second piece of advice. My third piece of advice is to publish early. Now, this is something that they don't tell you, but is a really big piece of advice. Publish by the third year. The reason for that is because, one, your PI is going to expect it, and they may not tell you right away. I know that my PI didn't tell me right away, oh, you need to publish something by your third year. But I had a senior postdoc in the lab that told me when his third year came around, our PI went to him and basically said, where's the paper? It's been 3 years. And this is an attitude that extends beyond just Harvard. When you're applying for a fellowship, having a paper after 3 years shows you were productive. If you get to your third year and you don't have a publication, the review panel is going to look at you as somebody that's been unproductive in your postdoc. So definitely make sure that you spend time working on something that you could publish within the first few years. And I would say the expectation is to have your first publication out within about your third year, and then a publication every year after that. That is typically what they're expecting. So that's kind of a hidden gem, if you will, something that they really don't teach you or stress to you, but I've found as I've gone, and as far as getting promotions, as far as getting grants, as far as the way your own PI is going to look at you, the 3-year mark should be your goal for trying to publish something. And then my next piece of advice is to just soak it in. So The typical work week as a postdoc at Harvard Medical School or Harvard varies. I would say most work 8 to 6. You're going to go in on the weekends, and that's normal. But you're always going to have people that are working night and day. You're always going to have people that are there all weekend. You need to know when to call it quits and when to basically say enough is enough. And I think I was one of those people when I first started, as are a lot of people that kind of work all around the clock because they think that's what's expected of them. And as you learn to start dropping that self-pressure, you start self-regulating a little bit better and saying, okay, this is basically what I can accomplish in a week, and this is the time I'm going to set aside to do it. But your growth in Harvard is more than just the time you spend at the bench. And you actually do more growing outside of the bench than you do at the bench. So you're going to have your internal seminars, your external seminars. Hopefully you have your weekly lab meetings, especially if you're in a bigger lab. You're going to have your, well, we called it a data group, but there's different names for them. It's kind of a science forum type setting where you have several labs that meet together and talk and present. And this is where you're going to grow the most. This is where you're going to see people presenting raw data. You're going to see how the top people in your respective fields critique the data, how they pick it apart, how they look for better hypotheses to move forward. And you really are going to learn the scientific method better here than you will anywhere else. And that was one of the things that I think I learned the best at Harvard. Was when I went there, I thought I learned the scientific method and the process of science from the time that I started, from the time that I left, much better. The way that you think about an idea, form the correct hypothesis, test it, structure your experiments, the elegance of your experiments, the details that you can go. The training that you get from these types of seminars is second to none. It seriously is. And no matter how much you think you know about this, I thought that I knew it when I went in, that, okay, I got this. Like, of course I know the scientific method. I have my PhD. Of course I know how to design experiments. But the types of experiments and the way that you go about parsing data, you will just grow astronomically. And be okay with that. Be ready to grow. And take advantage of all of this, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Even if it's afterwards, go up to the professor. Hey, why did you ask this question in this way? What are you thinking? Or go to a postdoc. Hey, why did you structure your data this way? Or why did you make your graphs this way? Don't be afraid to ask. This is the time that you are seriously going to grow. My last piece of advice I think I have is just have fun with it. You're going to fail a lot there. And if it wasn't already beaten out of you in grad school, it will definitely be beaten out of you when you do your postdoc at Harvard. You're going to fail. There's always somebody smarter in the room than you, which I think is an excellent thing. I think that you should always strive to be the stupidest person in the room. If you're in a room and you're the smartest person in the room, you're not making yourself any better. When you're surrounded by people that are exponentially smarter than you and more accomplished than you, that's how you grow as a person. And at Harvard, there is going to be no shortage of people that are smarter than you. It doesn't matter how smart you are. There's always someone smarter than you. And there's always going to be a Nobel laureate. There's always going to be somebody that's won more awards, gotten more grants, published more papers. No shortage. And so don't be afraid to soak it in. Have fun. Learn. This is seriously the most freedom you're ever going to get, because you're going to be able to explore new areas, test new techniques, really parse the edge of scientific knowledge in an institute that's well funded, hopefully with a PI that's well funded, so you're not really worrying about footing the bill. And if something doesn't work, it's not quite your lab that's skewed in a different direction. So don't be afraid to do that. And also don't be afraid to take with you some of your expertise. So when you join a lab, hopefully you're joining a lab that's slightly different than what you did. Don't be afraid to take some of your own knowledge with you. I know that I came from an aging lab, a biology of aging lab. And even though I was in a metabolism lab, I did focus on some aging related projects and was sort of the expert, if you will, in that area. Don't be afraid to kind of put your foot forward with that. So I hope this kind of helps. If there's any other questions about what it's like to do a postdoc at Harvard, I'm more than happy to talk about it. I think I pretty much summed everything up, and that is that the pressure that you're going to get is so large, and it's mainly internal pressure, and it's pressure that you're going to put on yourself, and that's fine. You know, don't let it get to you too much. Some pressure is good, but don't let it get to you. I would say that the hours are pretty standard, maybe a little bit longer than where you work everywhere else. The biggest difference is going to be the speed. Things here move very quickly, and you're really learning new techniques, and you're going to be in an institute where there's going to be a paper published in Nature Biotechnology with this new technique, like a new CRISPR technique, and the next week, even though it's brand new, your PI is going to say, let's implement this into our work. And so you're really going to have to be ready to hit the ground running and do things at an astronomically fast pace. But I think that going through this, you're going to grow and mature so much. I think I even grew and matured more during my postdoc than I did during grad school, which says a lot, because I think your grad school years are your most formative years in terms of a scientist and growing as a young adult. But I think as a postdoc, I think this is where if you do it at Harvard, you will actually grow more there than you did in grad school, which says a lot about the experience. So definitely take advantage of it if you get the opportunity. Yeah, with that, I'd like to say thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.